The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 5. Dragon and Judge. Chapter 1.
The quick red fox jumps over the...
Tanim paused, her glowing silver eyes narrowing in concentration, her whip-like Kada tail making little circles in the air behind her long, gray-scaled body.
Lassie dog?
She suggested.
Lazy dog,
Dracos corrected, keeping his own tail motionless. Having grown up among the Pukas instead of proper Kada, Tanim's body language was very different from his. He didn't want to make any gestures that she might interpret as impatience.
The Y at the end of the word makes the A long.
The lazy dog.
Tanim gave her tail another flick.
There are so many rules to this language,
she said ruefully.
And so many exceptions to those rules,
Dracos agreed, his mind going back to his own introduction to written English. He and the others of the Kada Shantiin Advance team had learned a fair amount of the spoken language from their people's earlier contacts with the Chitak nomads. But it wasn't until the advance team had been ambushed and destroyed, and Dracos had linked up with Jack Morgan, that he'd been instructed to the written form.
But you will make it through,
he assured Tanim.
I know you will.
Then I will,
she said firmly, turning back to the display.
When the tall cliff is lit by the sunlight.
Dracos listened with half an ear, his eyes tracing down the smooth lines of her neck and across the sleek scales along her flank. She did so much remind him of the other Tanim, the friend he'd lost so many years ago to the Valaga and their horrible death weapon. Which made it even more of a shock sometimes when he remembered that only a couple of weeks ago this Tanim had been little more than an animal. A puka rooting around in the forest of Ros Scrovy for grubs, with no knowledge of starships or computers or written English, or of war or hatred or enemies. Enemies who had launched a war of conquest against the Kada and Shantiin in their distant homelands, ultimately driving them out and into a fleet of refugee ships that was still making its long journey here to the Orion Arm, part of the galaxy. Enemies who had now made the same long trip across space in order to intercept and destroy those Kada and Shantiin refugees. Bringing his gaze back to Tanim's silver eyes, Dracos wondered if he'd really done her a favor by taking her away from that simpler, safer life. Tanim finished the page, and Dracos keyed for the next one. Nothing happened. Feeling his tail curve in a frown, he tried again. This time, the next page came up. But that second's delay meant that the ship's computer was busy. Very busy. Had Jack made it in?
Please continue with your exercises,
Dracos told Tanim as he headed for the day room door.
I'll be right back.
He found Jack in the SNA's cockpit, sitting in the pilot's seat and glowering at the displays. Allison Kana was standing behind him, leaning an elbow on the back of his seat as she gazed thoughtfully at something on a handheld computer.
Anything?
Dracos asked as he padded up behind Allison. No, Jack growled. For a minute there, I thought we were in, but then it locked back up on me. I told you it wouldn't work, Allison said. Malison and computers aren't as easy to get into without the proper passkeys and protocols. I suppose you want to give it a try? Jack suggested acidly. Well, not now, I don't, Allison said. The whole system's been alerted.
What do you suggest?
Dracos asked. We pull up stakes and try a different base. Allison cocked her head. Only next time I get to try first. Forget it, Jack said. My ship, my mission. Your ship, Dracos's mission, Allison corrected calmly. It's his people at risk out there, not yours. Maybe his people happen to be the first ones on the field, Jack countered. But that doesn't mean the rest of us are sitting on the sidelines. Once the Valaga finish them off, what's to keep them from turning the death weapon of theirs on everyone else in the Orion arm? Numbers for a start, Allison said, shutting off her computer. If and when you're ready to give up on that, I've got something to show you. Fine, Jack said, keying a handful of switches. I'm done. Thank you, Allison said. Uncle Verge, pull up your record of the Iota Clestes battle, will you? Jack, lad? Uncle Verge asked. Sure, go ahead, Jack said in a tone of strained patience. While you're at it, go ahead and call the port tower for clearance. We might as well get off this rock. Preferably before the Malison ring traces your intrusion attempt, Allison said. Allison? Okay, here we go. Allison interrupted him smoothly as the main display lit up with a set of slightly fuzzy spaceship images. 4 Malison ring attack ships, 4 Kadash-Shanteen advanced team defenders. Note how the Malison ring ships open up with the whatchamacallit.
It's called the Death,
Draco said, his tail lashing the air as the memory of that horrible day came rushing back.
The weapon that kills right through bulkheads and walls and even the heaviest metal or ceramic shielding.
And I still don't understand how that can work, Allison said, but I'll take your word that it does. Anyway, note how the Malison ring ships all open up with the death in perfect unison?
Yes, we see,
Draco said. And we've been through it 100 times, Jack added. Maybe you should have gone through it 101 times, Allison countered. Remember your theory that Neverland and the Valaga must be really good allies because the Valaga gave him their precious death weapons to play with? Jack's back visibly stiffened.
Look, we are listening.
Dracos cut him off, his eyes on the display. Arthur Neverland was the brains behind this plot. He'd been the second most powerful man in the megacorporation Braxton Universes until he had tried to kill Cornelius Braxton and take over the company. Jack and Dracos had foiled that attempt, driving Neverland underground in the process. But even on the run, the man had plenty of resources to draw on. One of his allies was the Chakuk family of Brumadum, with their collection of slaves and big Brumgan soldiers. Another ally was Colonel Maximus Frost and his team of Malison Ring mercenaries. All of them with just one goal, to assist the Valaga in their attempt to utterly destroy the Kada and Shanteen. Okay, Allison said. Let me fast forward a bit. There. See how all 4 death weapons also cut off in perfect unison? Because all the Kada and Shanteen were dead, Jack said with exaggerated patience. No, they weren't, Allison said. That's the point. The Haven Seeker's little twitch maneuver had slipped it out of the beam for a few seconds, which is why Dracos and the rest of the bridge crew were still alive at this point. So why did the mercenaries quit firing?
We were already on the path to a crash landing,
Draco said grimly.
They had no need to continue.
No, what they didn't have was the capability, Allison corrected. Jack frowned over his shoulder at Dracos. Is she making any sense to you?
Yes,
Dracos said, the pain of memory fading into cautious excitement as he suddenly saw where Allison was going with this.
The Malison Ring ships didn't shut off the death weapons. The weapons shut off by themselves.
Bingo, Allison said. Probably with their innards burned to slag. The Valaga didn't trust their new allies not to double-cross them and fly away with their wonderful little death weapons. So they put a timed self-destruct into each of them, giving the mercenaries exactly 3 minutes, 47 seconds worth of juice they could use to take out your advanced 4 ships.
Which is 2 burrs for Valagan time measurement,
Dracos said. Even a nice round number. Allison looked at Jack. You see now what I meant about them not being ready to take on the whole Orion arm? They don't even have enough people here to secure and operate the weapons aboard 4 ships.
Which also makes sense,
Draco said.
In order to have arrived before our advance team, they would have had to travel faster, with more fuel and fewer passengers.
It also means they don't trust their new allies any farther than they can spit them, Allison said. Not really surprising, I guess, Jack said. Not with what we know about Neverland and Frost. Though that doesn't mean they don't have a few more death weapons stashed away to use against the main refugee fleet. Oh, I'm sure they do, Allison agreed. But at least this means we'll mostly be tangling with Neverland and his buddies. At least those are known quantities. Known quantities who want to kill us, Jack muttered. Well, they want to kill Dracos anyway, Allison said coolly. Possibly me too. You they just want to capture. That's so encouraging, Jack said, stroking his cheek thoughtfully. I wonder what their plan is. That's easy enough, Allison said. Neverland wanted to kill Cornelius Braxton so he could take over his company. For the money, Jack put in. Sure, that was part of it, Allison said. More importantly, though, controlling Braxton Universis would give him access to the corporation's security force, including a lot of armed ships.
Would the Braxton security men really have cooperated in this kind of venture?
Dracos asked. I doubt it, Allison said, but he didn't need them. That was where the Chakuk family came in. They were going to supply Brumgan mercenaries to crew the security ships. Frost and his renegade Malison Ring buddies would provide leadership and also form the core of the attack force.
And while they engaged the Kadar-Shantine ships, the Valaga would be moving in and out of the fleet, using the death weapon on everyone,
Dracos said, a shiver running along his crest. At which point they would be free to loot the fleet for new technology, which they'd probably market through Braxton Universis, Allison concluded. Very simple, actually, and very, very profitable. That's what their plan was, Jack said patiently. My question was, what's their plan now? Oh, Allison said in a slightly more subdued tone. Good point. Neverland can't get those Braxton ships now, can he? They'll have to go with some other plan. Which I believe is what I just said, Jack reminded her. The question is what that plan might be. Jack, lad, Uncle Verge spoke up. We've got clearance to lift. Take us up, Jack instructed him, and give me the next two closest Malison Ring bases. Montenegro and Verstakim, the computer said. The record of Iota Klestes' battle disappeared from the display and was replaced by a star map. Montenegro is about 20 hours away. Verstakim about 32. We'll take Vertakim, Jack said, his voice suddenly odd. Montenegro's closer, Allison pointed out. I said we're going to Vertakim, Jack said in a voice that left no room for argument. He looked over at the computer, camera, speaker, and microphone module. And on the way, he said, we're going to stop off at Semaline. Semaline? Allison echoed. What in space is on Semaline? Jack didn't answer, but continued to stare at the computer camera. Jack? Allison said. Yo, Jack?
Uncle Verge, what's on Semaline?
Dracos asked. Go ahead, Uncle Verge, Jack invited. Tell them. Nothing much, Uncle Verge said. His voice was calm enough, but Draco could hear the stress beneath it. There's a lockbox in one of the banks at the North Central Spaceport. We used to drop by sometimes when our cash supply was low. No, we didn't, Jack corrected darkly. Uncle Virgil did. He never even let me out of the ship there, let alone let me go to the bank with him. That's nothing you need to worry about, Jack lad, yeah? Uncle Verge said, his voice low and earnest. Maybe some other day, huh? Some other days now, Uncle Verge, Jack said firmly. We're stopping at Semaline, and I'm checking out that lockbox. The lives of Dracos' people are at stake, Uncle Verge objected. Go ahead. Ask him if this is the time for unnecessary side trips.
Actually, I have no objection,
Draco said. Allison frowned at Dracos over her shoulder. You don't?
We have nearly 2 months until the refugee fleet arrives,
Dracos reminded her.
This will only take a few hours.
A few hours can make all the difference between victory and defeat, Uncle Verge countered. Shall I cite you a few historical examples?
No need,
Draco said, hearing his own voice darken.
I have more than enough of my own.
There was a moment of awkward silence. Even Uncle Verge apparently couldn't think of anything to say. So, Semaline it is, Jack said, climbing out of the seat. Allison and Dracos moved aside, and he brushed past without looking at either of them. Give it your best speed, he added as he left the cockpit. Whatever you want, Jack lad, Uncle Verge muttered. Jack was lying on his bunk in his cabin, staring at the ceiling with his arms tucked behind his head when Dracos arrived.
Are you all right?
The Kada asked, patting across the room. Sure, Jack said. His voice sounded oddly distant. I just wanted to be alone for a while, that's all.
Shall I leave?
No, that's all right, Jack said. I was just thinking about Semaline.
You remember it well?
That's just it. I hardly remember it at all, Jack told him. Just a few scattered images. He shook his head. You'd think I'd have clearer memories of the place where my parents died. Dracos felt his tail arc.
I didn't know that.
Jack shrugged. That's what Uncle Verge told me anyway. Like I said, I don't really remember.
You were only 3 at the time,
Dracos reminded him. For a moment, Jack was silent. You think it's wrong for me not to want to go there? Or to want to go there? He asked at last. Dracos hesitated.
In general, no,
He said, choosing his words carefully.
The past is important to all of us.
But you don't think this is the right time?
We do seem to have troubles and concerns enough just now,
Dracos reminded him.
Still, as long as you don't intend to launch a complete examination of your life there, I see no problem with stopping by.
I just want to see what Uncle Virgil has stashed in that lockbox, Jack promised. Then we're out of here and off to Vers Takim.
Where you'll let Allison try to break into the Malison Ring computer.
Jack made a face. Don't you start with me, too. Anyway, what makes you think she's any better at computer hacking than I am?
Nothing in particular,
Draco said.
But your techniques just now didn't succeed. There seems little point in refusing to allow Allison to try her methods.
I suppose not, Jack conceded. Fine, it can be her turn next.
I'm sure she'll appreciate that.
As much as she appreciates anything we do, Jack growled. I just can't figure her out. She picks at me about twice an hour.
More often if you've actually done something to annoy her,
Dracos murmured. Yeah, Jack said. But every time we try to drop-kick her off the ship, she refuses to go.
She has Tanim to think about now,
Dracos reminded him.
They're beginning to share the same symbiotic bond that you and I do.
And what, Allison thinks the two of them will be safer from Neverland and the Valaga if they hang around us? Jack shrugged. Maybe. I don't know, though. I still think she's working some angle.
Perhaps,
Dracos said.
Only time will tell.
Jack snorted gently. Or else time will slap us flat across the head, he muttered. I guess we'll find out which.